This episode of Troxel is supported by Avail. Content is more than Revit families. If it's digital, Avail can handle it. Learn more at getavail.com. Welcome to the Troxel Podcast. I'm Evan Troxel. This is the podcast where I have conversations with guests from the architectural community and beyond to talk about the coevolution of architecture and technology. A little bit of housekeeping up front for this one. I've been on a brief hiatus, maybe you noticed, that included a stint at the Built North America Conference in Anaheim, California, and at the National AIA Conference on Architecture in Chicago, both of which were fantastic opportunities for me to get back together in person with many previous and upcoming guests of the show after 3 years without these industry events. It's still odd to think about how the pandemic has affected our industry in very different ways. At the AIA conference, I was on the other side of where I usually am as a conference attendee, this time manning a booth in the expo hall for 2 days straight where we were introducing TECT, which is my normal job, to the attendees of the conference. And I'll be expanding on my thoughts over on the Peopleverse podcast, which you can find at peopleverse.fm. I also had a chance to get off the grid after those two events and do some serious adventuring with my oldest son. We had an amazing trip that included whitewater rafting on Class 2, 3, and 4 rapids in Northern California's American River, and we did lots of fishing and camping. A serious recharge was desperately on order. But I digress. In this episode, I welcome Robert DeMillo and Jilbert El-Zmetr. Robert is the CTO, and Jilbert is the global head of cloud and software engineering at Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill, also known as SOM. Rob DeMillo has stood at the forefront of leading-edge technology development throughout his career and is an advocate for ideas in technology that not only change businesses, but move entire industries forward. Jilbert El-Zmetr brings a potent mix of technical, operational leadership, and business-building skills to turn vision into results. They both have interesting backgrounds from outside architecture. Rob was in tech, media, and entertainment, while Jilbert came up through fintech, which makes this story a bit more interesting as SOM saw the opportunity to go outside of the architectural silo for some additional perspective when hiring the next wave of technologists to, among other things, design and build their cloud solution for their interdisciplinary design teams and offices worldwide. In this episode, we discuss why Robert and Jilbert were interested in solving problems in AEC with their varying technology backgrounds, their vision and implementation of a bespoke cloud computing platform dubbed SOM Stream and SOM Fabric, why it was important for the firm to take team collaboration to the next level via the cloud, and so much more. So now I bring you my conversation with Robert DeMillo and Jilbert El-Zmetr. Rob and Jilbert, it's great to have you here, and thanks for joining me on the podcast. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so you guys are both in the technology section at SOM. Rob, you're the CTO, and Jilbert, you're the director of software engineering, and you told me that you direct software, not lighting and not audio and not people. Now, this is fantastic because you guys are at the table at a global firm, and you are really thinking down the road as far as technology goes, from my understanding. And I want to use this opportunity to just reveal that to people. What is the vision behind what you're doing at SOM? And if, Rob, just jump into it and give us kind of a little bit of a history and what the vision is.
Yeah, I mean, just speaking for myself, so I have been doing cloud computing for a while. Prior to coming to the AEC industry, I was intimately involved in digital media, so video, computer graphics, animation, and had just come out of doing a startup that got sold to Amazon that moved the animation workflow into the cloud. When the deal got done to purchase the company from Amazon, I didn't want to go with the deal. And I had already been talking to a number of AEC firms about the potential for using what we did in a different domain. So what we did for animation, that particular workflow would work perfectly inside of architecture. And during that process, I got to know SOM. Flip a few months forward, here I am. And so I came here in the beginning of 2019, April 15th, tax day, 2019, and immediately started doing a deep dive into the firm and what they had done and what they were doing going forward, and determined fairly quickly that the workflows were basically identical, and moving the firm to a position of being able to reduce its dependency on physical machinery and reduce its the walls between the various offices because of geographic distance was great. And that combined with, I wanted to bring a computer science ethic into architecture in general. All the stars just aligned. So very quickly started sourcing people, and Jilbert's name pops up immediately when you do that. so Jilbert, you came on board about 6 months later, is that right?
Yeah, so that's right at the beginning of 2020, 3 months before everyone had to run home and lock the doors.
Yeah, sure.
And my entry into this world is maybe a little less linear than Rob's. Rob described me as the black box, essentially, in the Office of Technology. I came from the fintech world, financial services, hedge funds, banks, investment management systems and software, cloud engineering in that world, and had run my own businesses for probably the past 15 years of my career. And for me, it was an opportunity to move from an industry that is pretty much constantly at the bleeding edge of technology, or had been until that point, and go into an environment where there was a huge amount of opportunity to bring, innovation, new ideas, a different way of thinking about how business was done across all facets of the business. Rob and I, had a ton in common in terms of our thoughts around, the future of technology, how we can go somewhere and actually influence ideas and help people think about using technology in different ways. And that's what, I'm passionate about, even though my focus is software engineering, and that's kind of what the bulk of my career has been. I think anyone you speak to, or anytime you speak to Rob, anytime you speak to me, we care about what's going on with technology in the world. We have a lot of opinions about it too, whether they're right or wrong, but it's about talking about those things, creating almost an ecosystem within, our own teams, but also within the firm, about how to think about technology as a real disruptor to kind of the way we do business. Because, we build glass boxes that go to the sky. And that hasn't changed, and the workflows haven't really changed in a very long time. And it takes time to change them, especially at a firm the size of SOM. So hopefully, we can make some of those steps. And I joined because of the excitement around being able to actually really change and move the needle on kind of what we're doing.
And it worked. That's basically what we did.
Yeah, I have so many ways that this conversation could go. I want to start with the kind of leadership at SOM having the vision to bring you guys in to do this, because one thing that I think is pervasive in our industry, and this is something I include in a lot of talks and presentations I give, is that architects really hate two things. They hate the way things are, and they hate change. And so it really shows some leadership there from SOM to say, we want to be where the puck's going. We want to skate there. We don't want to keep doing things the same way. They want to position themselves as a leader in this space. Obviously, that has a lot to do with differentiating themselves from the rest of the competition, but also attracting the right talent and being where they want to be in the future, right? So can you just speak to that a little bit and talk about kind of how they approached you guys to bring you in, and how they're enabling you to actually have change happen at SOM? Because in AEC, change is difficult, right? We are creatures of habit, and it is difficult to move on to new ways of doing things.
Got to be careful what we say here, Rob.
I know, exactly. As you know, it's a firm, right? So there's no CEO. It's a table of partners. And you're right. They are extremely forward thinking. They did always have this vision of becoming a leader in technology spaces. And that was evident back in the 80s and 90s when SOM was very much at the forefront of bringing computers into architecture in the first place. And so they all understood that there needed to be another transition. And when I started talking to them and made it known to them that I wasn't going to go with the deal that was happening with my previous company, they said, we've been looking for a CTO for 3 years. And so that started a series of conversations. And the fact that they were not only looking for a CTO, but had gone out and done their due diligence, they brought in consulting companies to crawl through the firm and determine what it was that they should probably need to push forward. And CTO pops out of that when you do that analysis. The partners have been nothing but supportive in all of this effort. And without that support, the acceptance within the firm would be physically impossible, I think. So they're all, the firm takes its lead from what the partners say and do. And they've all supported this effort all the way through. So your assumptions, Evan, are really correct.
And as far as reaching outside of AEC and not kind of bringing somebody who is in the business, understands, what it's like to be an architect, practicing architect, how did they get to that point so that they were looking outside of their own silo?
You probably have to ask them that question. All I know is that the results made a lot of sense. As you heard from Jilbert and myself, neither of us have been in architecture, although I did consider it back in the grad school days, but I didn't pursue it. The fact that we're coming in from outside the forest, so to speak, to take a look around means that it is fresh eyes. It means that it is eyes that has not been trained in the AEC way of working, for better or for worse, which allowed us to sort of go through and go, okay, so if this were another vertical, this is the things that we would do. And that's what we started pursuing.
Jilbert, you mentioned earlier that you saw a ton of opportunity here, right? Because it was, coming from another place, you can apply everything that you learned potentially to this. I would imagine that I'm interested in what you saw in that potential, but also what it was actually like to all of a sudden start working with a bunch of architects, because we're a weird bunch for sure. And I'm really interested in kind of that outsider perspective of being thrown into that fire.
Yeah. So for me, I didn't really have any deep understanding of the challenges that the business faced from a technology standpoint. I just knew that, Rob essentially sold the dream, and this is my dream. And I'm living it every day.
That could go too long.
Yeah. So for me, the opportunity to kind of come in and have an influence about kind of the way people did things and helping people to kind of reimagine the way they use technology was really, I think, the opportunity. There's, like any business, right? There's people that are invested in continuing to develop their skills and knowledge. And there's people that just kind of want to clock in, get stuff done, and kind of move on. And that doesn't make someone good or bad, right? But I think that we know that the world is only heading in the direction of needing to embrace technology pretty much in every industry and all aspects of those industries as well. And, I think the question that you asked Rob, and, Rob's very humble about how kind of his role as a CTO, right? And I think the importance of knowing AEC isn't that important because Rob's, very storied career, lots of experience across different industries and experience being a technology leader. And I think that SOM craved someone that could come in, rally different minds and bring them to the table and take advantage of existing skills within the business and find ways to help that flourish, but also bring ideas from outside. And that's a delicate balance, right? And I think that it was controversial, right? Kind of to bring a CTO from outside. But, Rob is again did an amazing job because we've achieved so many milestones that Rob envisioned in his kind of initial vision when he joined the firm, and actually achieved them. So I kind of, as a team, we've been able to prove that we can take advantage of external talent, help internal talent flourish and grow, and sort of help bring an innovative, skilled mindset to the whole team, so everyone benefits from it across the business.
I appreciate the diplomatic way in which you called me old. So thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, the Love Fest goes both ways. I mean, this would not have been possible without Jilbert's leadership. We brought in a highly skilled group of computer science engineers, and I'm emphasizing that these are not coders, they're not scripters. These are folks that we've worked with in the past that are skilled in cloud computing, they're skilled in streaming, they're skilled in a lot of technologies that we're utilizing on a day-to-day basis. And they immediately came in and grabbed the bull by the horns underneath Jilbert's leadership. And we drove to excellence for our systems that we've put together incredibly fast. Gilbert's team put together our streaming solution and cloud file management solution within 18 months, which was, the way I do my work is in 18-month chunks. And so we did it within this 18-month time frame. And I would be not surprised to find that people were dubious of that time frame happening. But it did happen. And we very quickly pivoted to a cloud environment. So, kudos to kudos. And it's, by the way, extending that to the rest of my management team as well, my OT management team. They've all been really, really excellent.
Yeah. And the getting to the cloud is about achieving parity. It's funny to say that, right? Because when we came to SOM, Rob, the cloud was already like a very pretty much established technology platform that people should have been leveraging. But now we have parity, right? So from here, it's only about endless opportunity to be able to take advantage of kind of who we are, where we go, and how we leverage those capabilities by using the cloud.
100%. Yeah, when the cloud becomes a punchline on late night TV, then it's accepted. So,
yeah, you've passed the trough of disillusionment at that point. I'm interested in what the challenges were that you did identify, and obviously the focus, I think, on this conversation is really on implementing a cloud solution, and so I'd love to get into what that actually means. But beyond, where you ended up with this particular thread with cloud computing, what were the challenges that you guys identified coming into this with fresh eyes, as you said?
So there were three main areas identified almost immediately. And one was the tool sets that people were using. Of course, were focused on localized computing, laptops and desktops. We were using what I would consider to be archaic video conferencing services and email systems and things like that. So there was one phase of this, which was getting people to let go of having the comfort of local email clients or local communications technologies on their laptops and move to a cloud-based collaborative environment. So we've implemented Slack, we've implemented the Google suite of tools, Gmail, that kind of thing. So that was one bucket. The next bucket that Jilbert and his group were specifically hired for was to deal with the file issues. So we had, as a lot of people did, we had a cached file service across all of the offices with a repository sitting in one Amazon data center. And the idea was to build a file system that sat on top of Amazon so that all participating data centers were essentially their own file server, right? And so implemented something called, it's basically the SOM files. I blanked on the name. That's kind of amazing. SOM Fabric. So, because it was basically a data fabric. And then the third phase of this was to get computing off of the local machines entirely, right? And that involved creating a virtual machine environment within Amazon that allowed us to run full-featured, full-blown AAC software, and it's Rhino, Revit, the whole 9 yards, in a virtual environment, and have that information streamed back to just a local browser window. So that was the third phase of this, so we call SOM Stream. And Jilbert, those are the technology challenges. The social challenges had to do with adoption of the new technologies. People have their workflows. They have what they're used to, what they're comfortable from. So change management comes into play for this. The way that I usually do change management where I go is the drumbeat of change doesn't change, right? So the first couple of steps, migratory steps, is tough. But then once the population in an entity sees the pattern of release, they begin to accept the change and adopt it as it comes forward. And then what happens after a certain length of time is people see the benefits of doing this, and they see the benefits of moving to these cloud-based collaborative environments. That's my spiel. Jilbert, I don't know what you want to add.
One thing that's I want to just interject something here real quick is, and I'm wondering if this played into your guys' strategy, the outcomes at all, is for the longest time, I remember senior project managers saying, I can't believe there's a new version of Revit every year, right? Why do we have to do this every year? And you said, Rob, the drumbeat of change is change. It doesn't stop. And it's interesting to me now where you've got a device in your pocket that updates every single day. There's apps that are just, it's constantly being updated. It seems to me like that kind of mindset that I just spoke to is changing just because we have computers everywhere now. We do have computers that are constantly asking us to update software, or just doing it themselves all the time. Has that kind of helped kind of smooth the path here?
Once you make that connection visible to them, yeah, it does. And the conversation that you have to have, the conversation that quickly turns to is, if you do not update, once you walk into the river, the speed with which that river leaves you is breathtaking. And so if you don't update, if you don't constantly change your workflow and constantly change the way that you work, it will not be very long, especially now. This is true now, more true now than it was 10 years ago. If you do not change the way that you work, if you do not allow for updated technologies, you are going to be left far behind at warp speed.
Jilbert, do you have anything to add regarding those challenges?
Yeah, but I think that's echoing the sentiment, right? It's like the software keeps on evolving. But what that, I think, has to be aligned with, if you really want to be at the forefront of this, is your skills need to also evolve. And, you said it, Evan, yourself, architects are resistant to change. It's a creative business, right? Any kind of creative business, there's habits, there's, workflows that people have become used to. Every business has this. People have been used to doing the same thing over and over again. It makes it easy. It makes the start of the day easy. It makes the end of the day easy. You know what you need to do. As soon as you throw, as in Australia, we say throw a spanner in the works to kind of like mess up the work. So people kind of, it's a bit of a challenge. So one of the challenges kind of has been for me is kind of being comfortable with people being uncomfortable. And there's been a lot of that, right? And it's like, I think it's okay to talk about it, because there's, this phrase we use in my team is we continually strive for perfection, but never actually get there. And getting architects to understand that, and our business to understand that. The operations side is all in with this. That's kind of the easy part. But the creative aspect, the way people have been doing things, the way they studied and used Revit and Rhino and whatever at college, and are now using it within the business, hasn't really evolved much in the past 20 years. And not even getting people to think about things from a computer science, software engineering type mindset, automation, distributed computing. Like, we can talk about all of those things. Just getting people to think about a computer that's not under their desk and that is not persistent. So it's not the same computer every day. That maybe at the beginning of the day, you have to spend a few minutes setting up your workspace, how you had it yesterday, in the name of sustainability, in the name of cost, in the name of efficiency, and using the cloud to the best capabilities. Has taken time. A ton of education has gone into it. We kind of have to be even better as well from a PR and marketing perspective internally in terms of how we promote that agenda. 50% of people are all in, 50% of people are not all in. It's a slow change in the tide. And as we kind of offer, I think the more you give people an opportunity to learn, and I think everyone is willing to be educated and sort of learn about how to do things better. And I think we're kind of doing pretty well from that perspective. the stream SOM stream product that Rob mentioned is, very, very disruptive to the way people work. But again, it ties in. The timing was impeccable. It allowed people to work from, wherever, whenever, and not be tied to some VPN, some office technology. They had a multitude of data centers they could connect to, all of the same applications, all of their same data available from anywhere. It made that transition way easier because of the pandemic. Even though a lot of businesses have been using these sorts of technologies for a long time, that kind of helped us, I think, win that one.
It did, yeah. It made our point for us, which is an odd thing to say, but 100% agree with that statement.
That I think that happened to a lot of firms, right? It just created the sense of urgency. And what I'm interested in that seems a little different from what you guys did, from what I've heard a bunch of others, is you decided to build a bunch of these tools yourselves. So SOM Stream, SOM Fabric, versus picking something off the shelf. And so like a larger point here, I think, is architects are typically in the position of buying off-the-shelf software that somebody else designs. We're kind of at the mercy of many of these vendors out there who sell software. Revit's a great example of that, right? It's like they're moved on to other markets for development now because they felt like they pretty much own the architecture market. So they're going for the contractor market. They're going for the owner market. And so it's interesting to me that you guys, that SOM, decided to invest in creating your own platforms and systems to deliver this experience in the day-to-day. I'm interested to hear more about that.
I have a lot to say about that kind of thing. It's just to be 100% clear, I'm not all, let's go build it ourselves kind of thing, right? It's you do a buy versus build comparison at every step of every way. Even when Jilbert's team was building Stream, for instance, rather than build a profile manager, they sourced a profile manager from a third-party company, right? So it's finding the bits and pieces along the way to use the best in breed and then put it into the larger thing that you're building. And the reason that we built our own, the reason that I brought these guys in the first place, is that it doesn't exist, right? The way that we have architected this, the way that we've software architected this, it is unique to our situation here, for the way that our office is laid out, the way that people use the services, and that kind of thing. And it was helpful that we had a team that we've done this before, so it was helpful to come in and go, okay, you have to go bump, 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 and do these things. With regard to Revit, they need to turn. You're right. Revit is a application that was arrested way back in the 90s. Right, the basic architecture of that platform has not changed, and it's still just it's a large piece of code that doesn't take advantage of microservices and a bunch of other things that are now modern technology pieces. And they do it because the market's not there, right? But and as you said, they own the industry, so people are buying it, so they've got this captive audience. My message to the folks at Revit, if there's a message, is they should pay very close attention to what happened in the animation industry. Once again, there was a product, Maya, that had grabbed onto the animation market, and with the same logistics and the same kind of business flow logic and the same problems. Large application that was doing one thing. They had the animation community. We're done. Let's move on to do something else. And what grew out of that was the Blender Foundation. And so it was a bunch of animators that said, you know what, we don't want to do this anymore. We don't want to pay for a product that's stagnant, that just throws in a feature or two every new release. We want something better. And so the Blender Foundation was formed, and at first the animation industry was laughing at it. But over time, Blender, the animation application, grew and grew and grew to the point where it basically covers 95% of what Maya can do. And Maya is now seeing its market being eaten away by a free application. So, there is no reason why that cannot happen in the architecture space with Revit.
Let's take a quick break to share more about our sponsors. In this podcast, I talk a lot about all the realities with my guests, mixed reality, augmented reality, virtual reality, all the realities. And I've got a new message for you from my friends at Avail. Let's talk about the new reality, which is that content, as I've talked about in the previous message from them, both wants and needs to live everywhere. Long gone are the days of saving files to your local hard drive or to a single on-premises server. In order to solve remote collaboration, information has moved to the edge. The cloud is king, and the number of cloud services out there dictate that the number of storage locations will continue to grow dramatically. Where do you store your files? BIM 360, OneDrive, SharePoint, Box, Dropbox, AWS, Azure. Chances are you probably save them in some weird combination of those that I just mentioned, and more. Well, here's the point of this message. Avail hides the complexity of where content and information resides. What file to use used to be your biggest concern. Now it's where do all those files live. Avail takes where out of the equation, which means that with Avail you can actually find your mission-critical and not-so-critical files too, right when you need them. Avail helps get you the information you need faster. Go to getavail.com today to learn more. And now let's get back to our conversation.
And we didn't like that. I don't think we're, as a team of software engineers, I'll speak kind of on behalf of my team, we're not trying to rewrite, the Revit toolbox or the tool suite. We frequently are tasked with helping people do things maybe that they can't do in those applications, or create tools and small kind of reusable features within those applications, because the applications in the AEC world lack kind of a common language that they all speak. And that's changing. Companies like Speckle out there that are doing a little bit more, some sort of version control. And there's, NVIDIA trying their thing with a universal kind of scene descriptor format to create this common platform or language of all these applications. That's huge. These are huge things. But that means nothing to a business like SOM for the most part, except maybe for a few individuals who are passionate about those things. And it's, the whole build versus buy thing is important, right? So, Rob, my team, and really pretty much anyone in the Office of Technology, we dive deep into things like that to look at opportunities to leverage those technologies, integrate them into our workflows. The SOM Stream product, the SOM Fabric product, before we decided to build our own thing, which is components of potentially off-the-shelf technologies and also stuff we built internally ourselves. We evaluated, I would say, close to 30 or 40 products that could have done the same thing for us, but had shortcomings for one reason or another. So it only made sense to, pretty much piece together or patch together various pieces and create sort of a holistic solution. So it made a lot of sense. And, on the AEC side, we do the same thing. There isn't really a good ecosystem of, let's call them apps or workflows that help people do things. Like, we help build that through API connectivity, through, trying to hack a few pieces together because the applications are so old and haven't evolved. Getting people to think about using, operating systems besides Windows, like Linux operating systems that can take advantage of sort of distributed computing, fast spin up, fast spin down for rendering, for computation, statistical analysis, and that sort of stuff. And creating a suite, let's call it a self-service suite of products that people can use, no matter if you're a tech, someone who loves that stuff or not. It's easy enough for you to use it. And you don't really know what's going on under the hood, but you're automatically using this suite of products. So it kind of makes that jump or that barrier for an engineer that doesn't really care about technology that much, be able to leverage it and take advantage of it. And then we take care of everything under the hood so that we know, by using this platform in this way, shape, and form, we can extract these data sets. We can retain these data sets. This team over here on the other side of the world can take advantage of it. And thinking of it beyond just the day-to-day work
The interesting thing that I think would be worth talking about is the scale at which you guys are operating, and kind of just talking about that so people get a better idea of what that is for SOM. Because I have when I imagine my audience, like there's going to be very small all the way to large firms, right? And so give us an idea of where you guys are coming from when it comes to scale.
We're considered a large firm, and we have on the order of 1,400 people scattered worldwide in 13 different offices. Some of those offices are enormous. Some of those offices are not so enormous. So we had to treat all of them with the same level of seriousness. And there were challenges. Some of the challenges had to do with the environment that those offices are in. There's certain offices that are in internet challenged environments, and we had to be able to cope with that. And there are other places that are, a hop, skip, and a jump from the data center that they're using. And obviously things were easier there. So it was a wide variety of things. But I have to say the challenge here was less than the previous place I was that built something similar for the animation industry, where our product was a commercial product available to anybody that signed into the system, where you don't have control over the environment at all. You've got people dialing in from everywhere, trying to get the same kind of performance that you would in a major metropolitan area, but they might be, in East whatever, New Zealand, and have a hard time getting a connection, right? So from that aspect, what we had to deal with here at SOM is almost trivial in comparison. I don't want to trivialize it, but it was definitely less of a problem.
But didn't you have that same scenario when everybody went to home because of COVID?
Well, what we wound up doing was assisting people that were in situations where they were cohabitating with other people that were also using the internet, or maybe didn't have as high speed internet as they were only watching Netflix or something. And so we established a metric where we wanted to get everybody up to 100 meg down for to have a good experience. And so we helped people do that.
And so then when it came to kind of getting this, I mean, this sounds like it was a multi-year plan, and it sounds like you achieved this very quickly, actually. And so adoption, what was the change in behavior, the mindset really like for you guys to experience as you went through implementing these changes, where people did have the big machine under their desk to having, I don't know, a Chromebook or whatever kind of lightweight, terminal that they had to log into the cloud?
I'll speak from my point of view first, and then Jilbert can chime in with yours. So it was the first thing to notice that happened, and it had little to do actually with, it was before Fabric and before Stream. When we started putting in cloud collaboration software in place of long-standing localized software, we saw a dramatic increase in collaboration between the offices. Just dramatic, right? We gave people more options than using Cisco WebEx and a phone, right? We have, and now it's extremely mature. We have ways of dealing with remote collaboration using a variety of tools that interact and talk to each other, and you can see it when you look at the numbers. You can see the collaboration efforts go up, and I think people, even through the chat systems that we implemented, which was just Slack is what we're using. I think people became friends that were thousands of miles away from each other, that may not have even known anything about them other than their name prior to something like that happening. So that was all a positive. The workflow change with Fabric and Stream, Jilbert spoke to it, right? There's always this adjustment. It is a different way to work. There's just no way of getting around that. It is a different way to work from what people are used to. But those that are in it and sitting in the seat and that are comfortable now, they're helping us preach. So that's always a good thing.
Yeah, I think kind of, to put it really frankly, it's something that will always be a challenge that you will need to continuously educate people on, especially as new people come into the firm that have been used to using a certain way of, or use computers in a certain way, right? So, like an example of the I'll say the impact of that, what was it, last week or the week before, we onboarded 100 interns, right, for the standard intern season. We didn't buy anything for these interns, nothing. Literally one day before they were supposed to start, their accounts were set up in our system, and the day after they logged into SOM Stream with a computer that was living in the cloud they got to use. Like, we invested, zero really in physical infrastructure. So the real disruptive nature of it was visible. And this happened last year as well, and it happened again this year. And people were still shocked this year about how quickly it happened. And I think they will continue to be until it's normal that nobody owns a computer anymore, and that we're just using very, let's call it, dumb terminal devices like a lot of us used when we were at university, and everything happened really on the server side. That's just the way everything is going today. The kind of conversations we continue to have today are highlighting, here are some of the things that maybe you feel like have gone away that you're used to having. But in place of them, here are 10 more additional, powerful uses of technology that you can now exploit to do work better and do work smarter. So it's constantly like a good versus evil conversation that we have to have, because, like, whether we like it or not, there's this, it's impacting the way people work and how they're used to working. It's as simple as, like, most people are used to having a computer that's turned on all the time. They come in for the day, they press Control-Alt-Delete, and they start working, and everything is lined up exactly how it was yesterday. But that computer's been on, it's been churning, wattage. There's, a serious impact. So, with every decision we make, when it comes to building applications or buying applications or, engineering things, we have this purpose, which is sort of, bound by our sustainability goals as a firm. So any decisions we make, we have to think about that. And the more and more we kind of promote that idea to people, the more it makes sense, because, I think there's one common thread at SOM is everyone really cares about the sustainability and the future of our planet. Literally everyone cares about that. So the minute we have that conversation, it's a much easier conversation to have. With some, obviously, there's always going to be some frustrations, right? And kind of it's an evolution as we go through this.
That's a really important point to kind of harp on. We started the process of de-escalating iron. And, once Fabric went live, we started shutting servers off firm-wide to the point where there are no major servers running in any of our offices right now. We were using, as I said before, for our files were being passed around through a caching system where you had to have a cache in the office as large as the repository sitting in the cloud, which is kind of ludicrous, but that's how it was set up. And so we started turning those drives off. And to date, most of the external drives and most of the servers are off. And that's a huge power savings, right? That's less power consumed by each office. It's less HVAC required in each of the server rooms. And so the next step here, after we're comfortable that everybody is up and running comfortably, or the majority of folks are up and running comfortably in the cloud environment that was built, it's the next step is to turn off the desktops and watch what happens to the power consumption. So, yeah.
Interesting. It also kind of makes me think about kind of the threat points that were there in, your guys' office is a great example where you're turning off these potential points for security breaches to come in. I remember being in an office and like an intrusion came in through the building security system. Another one came in through the old PC running Windows 95 that was running the laser cutter, right? And it was like people didn't even think about these, out of sight, out of mind. But I would assume by also turning off these servers and turning off all these things, you're actually tightening up the ship as well.
Like every large firm, everyone is insured, right? So we're insured against malware, we're insured against viral takeovers, and those insurance companies aren't stupid. They hire other companies to do security checks on us. And I don't want to get into specifics, obviously, but we hit a 98th percentile when the tests were done this spring, I guess. which is the first time that it's happened here. So we have secured a very, very high security rating by implementing everything that we've implemented. So your assumptions are correct.
I'm talking to the 2% right here, aren't I?
Yeah, sorry about that. Coffee shop and coffee shop, and can I borrow your USB drive? Sure, here you go.
No problem.
Yeah.
So as CTO, Rob, I assume you guys are more than just implementing this kind of stuff, but you're also kind of in charge of facilitating this change. And so one of the things, Jilbert, that you talked about was training, right? Constant training. And so how do you guys handle that? I mean, that to me is one of the things that a lot of firms don't readily invest in, and they're relying on YouTube for that or for whatever, for many different reasons, right? It is another investment. So I'm just wondering your point of view on training and investing in the staff in that way.
We have a very talented group of talkers in my team. Not just Jilbert, all of our manager leads, Gary Holder and Blake Coddington and Connie Mall and Kat Park, combined with Jilbert, they're my management team inside of the Office of Technology. They and their staff are really, really good at giving demos and talks and, writing the papers to cover as much of the topics as we can. We can always do more. There's always, the problem with verbally communicating things in a talk to 20, 30, 100, 500 people is things get missed. People don't ask questions. They're doing something else while they're listening. And so you got to come back and do it again and again. And so I think we can do better. I think we're doing really, really well. I think we can do better. Jilbert, you want anything to add to that, or is it?
Yeah, training is like, because my kind of remit is focused around computer science, software engineering. So, when I train people, I train, geometry focused, computational design focused people on how to use version control, how to, make sure their code is structured in, a proper, let's say we call it Pythonic way that follows specific, architectures and uses specific algorithms that they use, secure source control. They don't just download random scripts from the internet and say, I'm just going to try this out. And they follow, guidelines around best practices from going from development to staging to production. So like my focus is there. And the people that are, I think, skilled in, let's say, scripting or, writing Grasshopper type stuff or writing add-ins for Rhino and whatnot, really love this stuff. They really get into it because they know that it makes them much better at their job. It also makes them more employable, in this world where I think sort of software engineering, computer science, coding skills will become pretty much, I think, a requirement in the next 5 years or 6 years of this business. So the more we can impart that knowledge to, leaders in sort of the geometry space or the design space, the more they can, train other people within the firm in that skill set as well. So I think, look, in general, if you can build tools to teach people how to use things, like I mentioned earlier, under the hood, a lot could be happening that people maybe don't care about the detail. But I think if you let them know that, like, okay, by using this process, you can reduce the time it takes, to render these frames from, the 6 hours that it takes you not being able to use the computer that you have under your desk down to 20 minutes or 5 minutes. You decide. And you decide how much money you want to spend on that render, because you can choose that now. And that flows into other aspects of the business, from project management to budgeting and all of that kind of stuff. So people start to think, by kind of giving them those tools, start to learn about what's the impact of my action in using the different technology that I have, and how can I use it better. I think we've been good at that. I think like Rob said, there's still a way to go, and we'll strive for perfection, right? We're never going to get there.
That's my pessimism employee. I'm never really satisfied with that part. Like, I want it to be, crisp.
That's important. I think that it's important to stay hungry like that. It's interesting to link decision making at a personal kind of staff level to the impact on the business. And that starts to give them a better picture of the business of architecture and how they're contributing to that. So that's fantastic to hear about. One of the, I want to start wrapping up here, and I want to give you guys kind of an opportunity to paint a picture of what it's actually like, what for a user somebody who joins SOM at whatever level. I mean, like the day-to-day, we've talked about some higher level concepts here, cloud computing, the SOM stream. Like, give us an idea. I know you mentioned Slack, you mentioned the Google Suite. What are some of the other kind of key pieces to the puzzle, and what's it like when somebody kind of works at SOM on the production side of things when they're day to day?
So it's when somebody comes in from fresh, they don't notice any change, obviously, because they're new to the firm. So just onboarding them to the new systems is just de rigueur. There's with regard to some of the collaborative tools, what's been fun. There's been a couple of things that have been fun. One of the things that's been fun is that as people started to get into the concept of collaboration, especially once we all were locked in our homes for a couple of years, they started suggesting software themselves. And so, for instance, we took on Miro. Architects like to do a lot of in-person sketching and displaying models and talking about the diagrams on pinboards and things like that. And there's no digital equivalent to that, really. And so what was suggested to me by one of our folks in the San Francisco office was, hey, have you checked out Miro? And we did. And it seamlessly integrated. People immediately took to it. For a while, we couldn't keep up with the license management. There's so much of it. So the user acceptance and the user pushing for some of their favorite puppies, it has been fun, right? And I think it's been fun for them and fun for us, and the collaborative effort between the two have been good. And then the other thing that's happened is we started using Slack, and this really came out of Jilbert's group, but expanded quickly to Blake's group and some of the other groups, was using Slack as a user interface to the firm. So Slack is very easy to code, right? I don't want to trivialize it, but it's very easy to make plugins and have little Slack robots that can do things for you. And so Jilbert's team instantly started by being able to fire up cloud-based instances via Slack, and Blake just implemented an Adobe License Manager in Slack. So very quickly, there are tools that are adapting to the environment that's currently in place that make sure that people can manage their environment without having to learn something new. They're already in Slack. They're in Slack most of the day, and it's very easy to just do a thing. So those are the two things I would point out. Jilbert, I don't know what you want to add.
I think the biggest thing to me that I think is visible to a user when they come here is that we care about because everyone's says, what's in it for me? I think we listen to what people want to do, or their ideas and their thoughts on how they think the technology should operate. And like Rob mentioned, people give us ideas about software applications that are used within the industry, and then we evaluate those and we dissect them and we see how they would best fit into the workflow of the firm. But it's all driven by, the subject matter experts, because that's not us, right? I think we have no ego about saying that. I think it's important that we stay really connected with the people that are on the ground doing the work and take their ideas and their thoughts. We're evaluating a product right now with the with the design studio, geometry, digital sort of design geometry specialists that will bring together, a whole new way of working at SOM, from front to back, and using a technology to do that. And we essentially have picked different people from each discipline to be part of that pilot, to evaluate that technology, because we can't do that. Right. So we build the technology for them. We give it to them and we say, okay, go see how you could potentially disrupt the way SOM works today using this new tool set, and come up with the workflow that the firm will use for decades to come. So they have an opportunity to really change that, change the way we work at this firm. And I think that's what's exciting, and will continue to excite people that come and join SOM or people that are working at SOM that are looking to kind of continue to get interested in what's going on.
It's another great thing to hear. Absolutely fantastic, because this is an enablement by leadership to have the practice side helping drive based on, what they're seeing, because they are the ones who are the doers. And if they have a hand in that decision-making process to say, these are the tea leaves that I'm reading, that where we're going to be when we're 5 years down the road practicing our craft, it's absolutely fantastic to hear that, because I think a lot of times we as an industry get our blinders on and we don't think things are going to change. Like the weather today is going to be the same as it was yesterday. And that's a very much a hard thing to overcome in this industry for a lot of people. So it's fantastic to hear that there are people being enabled to prototype this process, potential future processes without like a direct ROI on that, right? Because I think a lot of business decisions are like, how is this going to help me right now? And if it doesn't help me right now, we're not even going to consider it. So it's fantastic to hear that. If you guys had the opportunity, last question, to kind of, put the megaphone to the industry about something that you feel like they need to hear, because this is now taking it outside of SOM, but taking your experiences that you have applied sounds very successfully at SOM and help raise the boats of, throughout the profession. What would you say to the rest of the profession with your megaphone?
Well, never give me a megaphone. That's a bad idea. I just did one earlier with the cautionary tale to the Revit people that they should pay attention. The overriding message I would have for the industry is this is not impossible. This is very, very doable. You don't need the stuff we had before. You just do not need it. And it's a different statement now than you would make 5 years ago, 6 years, 7 years ago. And 5 or 6 years from now, it's going to be even different. It's going to be even more extreme. But, we have proven you don't need $20,000 workstations under every single desk, and you don't need $1 million worth of servers and drives in a back closet somewhere.
Again, I don't like megaphones, so don't distribute this too far. No, I think that I guess whoever's listening to this, right, is probably listening to this because they're interested in technology. I think that message needs to be megaphoned out, is like invest in the technology capabilities of the business, of your business. If you're a business owner or you're influential in a business, or even if you're not, invest in those skills. And when I say invest in those skills, I'm not saying like learn how to use Google Drive and some of that stuff, but like invest in like really understanding how can you work better using technology, from learning a little bit of code through to evaluating other tools that are out there in the market that maybe will help you work better, and bring those ideas to the table so that the firm sees that people care about it. Thankfully we have a CTO that drives that, right? But now we have a whole firm that drives that, because it took that small change to happen. I think a lot of firms haven't really, of course, like the top 5, top 10 players are thinking about this stuff, right? But there's this huge market of, 50 to 200 person AEC firms that are probably using legacy technology, Microsoft Word, 1995, and haven't evolved their applications, that haven't invested in potentially someone, university graduate that has some software engineering or software development skills to help them come and rethink how they do things, automating processes, farming out processes to the cloud. And it can help them do business better. They can make more money. They can be way more competitive and make it an interesting place to work as well.
Yeah, that's 100% right. And get your people involved. Get everybody, don't dictate, listen. Like, what do people have to say at your firm or your office or your company environment? Like, what are their pain points? What would they like to try?
Key aspect of leadership is being able to listen and weigh everything that comes in, right? And make decisions based off that, and enabling people to be a part of that decision-making process, especially when things are moving this quickly. I mean, you mentioned 5 years, right? Oh my, we cannot imagine what it will be like in 5 years. It's impossible.
We'll all be living in the metaverse.
We will. We might. Yeah. We just might all have fanny packs on our face. Yeah. Well, thank you both for taking the time and joining me today. I think it's a great message for the profession, for the industry, but also a great case study in what's possible. So I really appreciate your time, Rob and Jilbert. This has been a fantastic conversation.
Thanks, Evan.
Pleasure. Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you to Avail for their support of this podcast episode. Visit getavail.com to see their holistic approach to content management today. This show is part of the Gabled Media Podcast Network. You can see all the shows at gabledmedia.com. That's GABLMEDIA.com. You can help support what I'm doing here by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts to help get the word out, and of course, share it with your friends. I'd love to hear from you, so leave a comment on the website at trxl.co/podcast, where you can find every episode. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. Just search for eTroxel. Talk to you soon.